Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this episode of the Enquiry. So today, Lisa and Jess are joining me and you all to talk about defining success by unleashing your unique identity and personal strategy. Yes, we are talking about personal strategies and not personal branding today. And this to help you to stand out and connect with your identity and also the identity of others. The key thing about this is understanding how your unique why, right? And your unique what you are standing for, your skills, your passion, the way you put yourself out there as well when you are positioning your product and services. But it's also about understanding the techniques which allows you to build those personal brands and strategies, ensuring that you are consistent and congruent always with what you are doing and what you are saying. So, Lisa, let's start. What do you
Yeah.
think about the topic?
First of all, so excited to be back here with both of you. Yay. Another trifecta on the inquiry. Very, very, very exciting. You know, let's differentiate because you both know me. I'm always asking you questions like, okay, I understand this, but how does this relate to that? And I always seek counsel from you all as I'm trying to figure these things out and navigate what I'm reading and, becoming more aware of. So let's differentiate between personal strategy and Jess, you'll love this because both Sabine and
Mhm.
I focus a lot on Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 strategy for business. But let's talk about this as it affects us personally versus your personal brand. Um, and would love to hear your thoughts, how we sync those two together and what really are the differences between your personal strategy and your personal brand. And I always call it like the golden thread that you use to weave that together.
I love that. That's a really great question. So, with personal strategy, when we do, and we're all strategists, we've all done strategy for everything from a startup to a large corporation. But, when you think about that idea of a strategy on a page, which is you have this ultimate sort of, you know, objective, you have this thing on the horizon that you're trying to get to, whatever it is. I'm launching a podcast, I'm rolling into a new marketplace, I'm putting out this brand new product, I'm shifting from being known for this thing to now being known for this thing because I've left this part of my career and I'm trying something a little different over here. So whatever that horizon line is for you, everything in the strategy needs to be architected and designed to get there. And anything that's not a part of that architecture really shouldn't be a part of the strategy. And so that's where the strategy, it's really is about connecting the dots and the points, and it starts inside. Where am I going? Where do I want to go? What am I trying to put out into the world? How am I going to get there? That's all the strategic part. But then how you take that internalization and broadcast it out so that other people who are not in your head and in your heart can understand what you're doing, that they're receptive to your message, that it makes sense to them, that it looks consistent, even though you used to be at company A, but now you're a founder of company B, and you want all of this to be very congruent and make sense. That's where the brand comes in, because if the brand is consistent and clear, you can change, you can move, you can navigate your strategy. And the whole time your audience, your colleagues, all of the people that you need to have an understanding of this will be able to comprehend what you're doing and why. And so I think it's about taking something, because I think all of us on the inside, we make perfect sense to ourselves. It's very clear. It's very logical. We understand exactly what's going on in here. And if you let someone else inside your brain, they just might be like, this is kind of crazy in here. It's a mess. So I think that's where the brand comes in, is to take all of this inside and now we're projecting it out in an organized, understandable manner.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because you're actually talking about personal strategy, Jess, which is about really defining purpose, values, strengths, the things which make us tick and perform every day, vis-a-vis personal branding, which is about, I guess, the skill we are bringing to the party, the behavior we want to emulate, the personality traits we want to highlight, which is, we have to say, before joining here today, we were talking about branding and branding experiences, and we can actually often see the discongruence, right? The misalignment that exists out there, right, Lisa?
Mhm.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about when Jess was talking and the incongruence kind of on that, it used to be, which is why I think a personal strategy is so important. It used to be that people could only associate you with one thing.
Mhm.
Like in our own brains, we were wired to draw, we're wired to draw congruency when we look at people, when we interact with people, when we reflect upon people. And we're going to talk about some examples today, but we're wired to draw congruency. Like we want to figure out what people are doing and how it relates. And I would say, when I started my career, maybe it was just easier because congruency was I was this job and that's who I was. And I remember back in those days telling everyone, oh, yeah, I became an accountant, but that's really not my core foundation. I remember explaining that to people because sometimes people would say, like, if I'm at a party, they're not going to guess that I was an accountant and then later on a CFO. That wasn't like congruent with my energy, my interests, the things that I was talking about. But it actually was congruent with some of the parts of the way I think and the way I analyze,
Mm.
but it wasn't my lead. And the
Mm.
reason why I'm giving this example is in a world where we are, and we've always been, but we can now be multidimensional with the things that we participate in, with the things that we give our attention and our passion towards. A personal strategy becomes even more important. So, the more dimensions of yourself that you want to activate and tap into, the more you need this mesh, if you will, overlaying that for people that, to your point, just aren't in your head, that can draw that congruency. Because if you lay that mesh for them and you sit at the top of that with your personal strategy, then and then only do they understand all the radial dials, the boards you participate in, the companies that you serve, the projects like the three of us doing authentic identity. How does that tie into our personal strategy? So I think it's really important. And yeah, we'd love to back to you, Sabine, on that. I just think it's so important that we focus on drawing the congruency for other people so they don't have to fill in the blank on their own.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so true. What I was thinking as well, I'm hearing about personal identity alignment with value and aspiration. I think also it's about looking at, what we've done in the past, which is congruent and reflecting what we are strong about. So the anecdotes, the story, the testimonial, who actually help us really build on strengths, rather than focusing on things which we like less, which are what you call often drainers, right, or depleters, Lisa. But it's also about knowing that nothing stays still, and we have to reinvent ourselves. I think we had a timeline maybe to 4, 5 years, 10 years, maybe once upon a time. I think now we are going into circles which are much faster, maybe 2 to 3 years, and we have to get used to that, right? 2 to 3 years, we need to reinvent ourselves. So, Jess, examples. What does success looks like when we think about alignment?
Well, I love thinking about this as on the individual level, the strategy and the brand and the way that alignment works. So an example that comes to mind is Steve Jobs. Everyone always uses Apple as an example. So it's, no doubt we're going to talk about the founder. And so what Steve Jobs was known for as a leader, and then what his company as an extension of himself was known for. And I love that the company is an extension of him and not the other way around, because that's something we talk about a lot, that's becoming more and more common for us, that we're going to drive the logo mark instead of it driving us. Is it's known for innovation, disruption, pursuit of perfection, refinement, minimalism, beautiful aesthetic design. And so if you just look at Steve Jobs as an individual, even in the way he comes across, even physically, he's kind of famous for having this uniform that some people have emulated. And there's mythology behind it. Oh, he wore the black turtleneck and the blue jeans, so he never had to make a decision. That's just more brain power this way or that way. You could argue that. You could also argue that if a person is about efficiency, minimalism, starting to subtract extraneous things, stylistically, it just makes sense to dress that way. That's just actually a very like accurate reflection of what his values are and who he is. So maybe it was for efficiency's sake and he has 100 of the same shirt, but maybe it's actually that style is a reflection of his appreciation of just being minimal, not being the loudest, craziest thing in the room. If he wore, bright Hawaiian shirts and had a perm and big, colorful glasses, it would have been a different dimension, and it might not have fit with what he's doing as a leader and his own aesthetic, which is reflected in the brand itself and in Apple. And I think for that brand too, if you think back to when it began and his aesthetic and his values are coming out in everything that they do, even then he probably didn't envision, maybe he did, he was a visionary, but I doubt that he envisioned in the year 2024, these Apple stores and Genius bars, but how even to this day, that through line is still there. He's long gone. And all of that perfection, minimalism, appreciation of aesthetic is still consistent. And it's moving through the brand. It's because he set that tone. That's who he was as an individual. And it was so powerful.
Yeah, that's incredible. Lisa, any other examples for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples. So I think I'm just like, it's like we're sampling here, but just honestly, I think, first of all, Jess, I love the Steve Jobs example, and I think it's so relevant. So I just wanted to amplify that. And even as an extension of him and his brand and his strategy, the people that he hired, I read this long book about his lead designer and lead architect of like he designed the AirPod case, and he was his designer. He was fixated on the magnetic closure. Like it had to be smooth, round, and the magnetic closure. And so Steve was also very congruent in knowing that minimalist and that design aesthetic, that he had to hire people that matched that level of brand architecture, not only for Apple, but it was because Steve knew that he needed to work with people that embodied those same authentic, in Steve's case, we could use the word obsession. So let's go on to my example, which is I'll pick one of the beacons of society. I'll pick Oprah Winfrey. I have been following Oprah for my entire life. She's somebody that I just think of as, she was so intentional with everything she's done. Now, of course, I think we can look back now and say, well, she's Oprah, right? Like, I mean, we just immediately say she's Oprah. And I just, recently saw her presenting awards at the Grammys. And I mean, first of all, she's fabulous to watch. But let's step back and really think, she leveraged all the obstacles and all of the things that she endured and navigated in her personal life to build herself. Like, her brand is Oprah. To build herself as one of the most influential media moguls. But in doing that, her strategy was how she empowered, motivated, and amplified others, which is an incredible congruent strategy. I mean, one could just say, well, in order to be liked, you need to be like giving to others, or like, whatever. You could take that. Was not her strategy. Came from a deep rooted giving back, because she had to overcome when there was like maybe not an Oprah there for her. Right. So it's that deep rooted empowerment. She leveraged that platform to drive social change. She still does today. She was able to align her personal and her professional values. So while she created this incredible Oprah brand of herself, her strategy was always consistent. I personally cannot think of a time where I've seen anything incongruent in her strategy. The other reason why I mentioned Oprah is she's never just done one thing. If we think about Oprah and we talk about this multi-dimensional career and things that people are doing, and they're never just like in one lane, Oprah has always been somebody that has created this chasm of she's doing multiple things. And in those things, through her strategy, we always accepted, well, that's Oprah. We never really, I don't know if you all, but have you ever really been like, why is Oprah doing that? I don't think you really have, because of her strategy. I think she emulated, and I'm not saying she was the first, Jess, by any means, or
Mhm.
Sabine. I would love to know what you think. But I think her strategy was so embedded and intuitive that none of us ever had to wonder why Oprah was doing this. I think that is a model of a personal strategy executed well. And Sabine, I'd love to know, like,
Yeah.
what you think about Steve Jobs and Oprah. And clearly I'd love to know what example you'd love to share with us.
Thank you. So, regarding Steve Jobs, for sure, he has been definitely an influence for many of us, and I'm sure any innovator will aim to learn from Steve Jobs and emulate his focus. He has amazing quote around the rebels, not to try and be different from the crowd, and it's actually critical to differentiate. And I think every innovator, entrepreneurs respect that from an inspiring person like Steve Jobs. I admire the detail. I admire the congruence and the relentless focus for customer centricity, which I think from all the recent products which came out within Apple product line, you can see, even though it was not perfect, think about your first iPhone. We all went for it. And what was it, right? It was an email and a phone, I think, the first one. And look at how much stuff is on this platform today. You had to have a vision to bring people on a journey to combine email, phone, and your music on the same device, right? um, you had to have a vision, you had to have focus, you had to have believers and belief in your execution. In the case of Oprah, as you know, when we do visualization and manifestation, Oprah is on my board because she's a newscaster, right? She's someone who tried to find really unique news and elevate others. That is one of the strategy. And by doing this, she has built an incredible community and network of followers and believers, Oprah believers. And through that, also has been able to inspire women and business. Think about Sarah Blakely. Her only dream was to meet Oprah when she actually set up Spanx, and look at where she is today. My example. So I don't want to go into too many examples, but I want to say that there are as many great examples among men, um, leaders, and change makers. We can think about the usual Elon Musk, which is very much about futuristic vision. A bit of what we call a contrarian as well, or even the like of a Bill Gates or Gary V, also, who is also very much focused on brand, entrepreneurship, and helping leaders become better leaders. And I think now he's doing quite a lot of work around mom entrepreneur, mompreneurs. I can't remember.
Mompreneur.
Mompreneurs is the way you say it. It's interesting to look at some of the work he's doing on Instagram, but you see there is this mompreneur thing going on, as well as a target segment that Gary Vee is going after. But the example I wanted to maybe dive into is somebody I met actually during the Olympics in London. She was playing in one of the smaller courts, and I ended up passing by, and I look at this, I would say, this giant woman, and I said to my husband, "Oh my God, I didn't realize Serena Williams was so big." And so I looked at her, and she's literally that Venus. I would say Serena Williams was like this Venus woman playing with other player, and I can't remember who that player was because I was so mesmerized by her. But what she has done over the years is being representative of gender equality and racial justice. She has been really working hard to drive societal norms and advocating, better better alignment and reducing marginalized communities as well. And she's a symbol, when you think about it, of resilience and focus and empowerment. She became who she is because she just focused on it. She loved what she, as a tennis player, what she was doing, what she's doing, but she used that as well as a platform to empower and recognize other and inspire other as well. So Lisa, should we go into talking about influencers and maybe one of the big problem we all have, which is imposter syndrome?
Yeah. By the way, I can only imagine how awesome it would be to actually be courtside with Serena Williams. So I just stopped there when you said that. I'm like, oh my gosh, seeing somebody that is literally larger than life and all she's doing for everything she's doing, including making a statement about working women and like her behind the scenes documentaries, Sabine, is just unreal. But yeah, let's discuss, like, let's move to this. Now we've gone through examples of successful alignment. Let's move to, I'll call influencers and imposter syndrome. So, okay, you're sitting here and you're thinking, great, all these examples. I don't really know my own personal strategy, but I need to get active. And so we kind of tend to gravitate towards people that we want to emulate, right? And it's like, okay, which is natural, by the way. And I want to use one example of Vincent van Gogh and what he, was doing when he was doing some of his painting. There's a famous example where he conceptually emulated a different artist, but he put Vincent's, like, it looks Van Gogh, but if you put it back to who he drew inspiration from, you can clearly see the inspiration. And so I thought it was interesting to maybe lean in on Vincent van Gogh with imposter syndrome, because as we all know, he had huge imposter syndrome, even though he was one of the, I think, one of the greatest pioneers of his era in art and painting. But sometimes if we don't know who our true selves are, we inadvertently become someone else. We're not aligned to our authenticity. We're emulating others. That combined with our own imposter syndrome of, well, I'm not good enough. My point isn't relevant enough, or, oh, like, I really had this point, but nobody else has that point. It can lead us to a position of second guessing, and in second guessing with your personal brand, that can lead to inauthenticity, which creates ultimately a subtle fraction or incongruency signal, vibration, maybe, Jess, is the word I would use.
Yeah.
You're sending out this vibration that's incongruent that maybe you yourself don't even pick up on, but other people do.
Yeah.
And when we create that incongruency, it's kind of going against what we're trying to do to begin with. So it's this weird juxtaposition of, don't worry about it, get started, like, put yourself out there, get started, go. There's no wrong way. You can always be, in essence, on the fly. And we want people to put themselves out there. But by the same token, it's like, hold on, make sure you're not being incongruent. And sometimes that can lead to this huge, where do I start, paralysis and potential incongruency. So on that note, I think that people need to be self-assured that you can put yourself out there, and you do it through authenticity. And Jess, you've seen this a lot, as have you, Sabine. Just what do you think? Where's a good place for people to say, okay, I'm at this inflection point? First of all, recognize that we all have imposter syndrome. I mean, when I first started, like, looking at LinkedIn and I met Sabine, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could never be that, right? Like, there's huge, honest, earnest imposter syndrome. But I didn't, like, copy Sabine as an example. I had to navigate finding my own voice. What do you think, Jess?
This is probably the number one just roadblock to anyone getting started and stepping into their role and really owning it. There's this imposter syndrome, this feeling, this fear. I would say this baseline starts with personal development, and you are not going to find any high level, high powered, successful person that does not have a consistent practice of some sort. They meditate, they journal, they go to therapy. They're doing some sort of deep personal work regularly. Hygiene, I mean, maintenance of themselves. Because if you're going to put yourself outward, right, but it's all about taking what's inside and projecting it outwards in a way that's transparent, authentic, consistent. You have to know yourself really, really well. So I think the first place you start is with whatever form, methodology, modality of personal development, whether you're just reading books, and you're just constantly learning. It can really be anything, but if you aren't devoting serious time and energy to knowing and understanding who you are on a deep, deep level, then none of the rest will work. And so I think we have our ideas about how to do that. We have, we'll talk about, some of the workshops we're doing later, and we have codified processes and systems and, things that we can do to help. But everyone needs to start to devote that. It's a form of self-care. Take care of yourself, know yourself, work on yourself. So that's the first piece. And I think that a lot of times what you see, particularly you see this with influencers, you'll see someone maybe who hasn't done the homework on themselves or on their own personal strategy, and something happens. A post goes viral, something takes off, and all of a sudden they do have a spotlight here. They have a platform. And what do people love to do in the age of the internet? As soon as someone climbs accidentally or on purpose to the top of a pedestal, is to knock them off of it as fast as possible, to go dig up a 10-year-old tweet, to find an inconsistency, to say, you said you were vegan, but we saw you eating a hamburger last week at this, whatever it is you're doing. So I would say that one way to overcome imposter syndrome, it's the same thing as when people talk about lying. What's the biggest issue with lying? It's how much energy it takes.
Yeah.
What did I say to which person? Where was I at what time? All of the tracking that's required if you're going to lie about anything, even something small, something big. So the same thing with being authentic. And my favorite example, you guys know this, but a lot of people don't. I used to teach yoga and meditation. I've been practicing for like 25 years, and I was a teacher for a long time. And I did a teacher training, and I will never forget my teacher that was training us to be teachers, because this comes up, authenticity. Because you're standing in front of a room of people, they're listening to you. They're curious about who you are. And she said, the worst thing you could ever do, and yoga is a great example because that world has so many affiliations, right? With, lifestyle and what people believe or how they act. And she's like, for the love of God, do not tell your yoga students that you're a green juice smoothie chugging, barefoot walking person. And then you bump into them at the grocery store with a bag of Doritos in your grocery cart, and you have to like run the other way and hide. She's like, if you eat Doritos, just admit you eat Doritos. Own it. Yeah. You don't have to. And so I think that's where authenticity, this becomes a problem for people, because maybe they do want to be taken really seriously in the financial world, or they want to be taken really seriously in the branding or marketing world. And they have a concept. They have a preconceived notion about what a successful person in that industry or that modality looks like. And they're trying to jam themselves into it, and it doesn't fit, and it's fake. And of course, people find out, they can feel it, they can sense it, and you'll be uncovered for whatever you really are. So the truth out, and if you want to really stand out too, you have to be who you are. So I think it all starts with the self. Work on yourself, understand and know yourself, be comfortable and absolutely understand who you are, be unapologetic about it, and you won't get in trouble. You'll be fine. John McEnroe is one of my examples of that. If I come to you and I'm like, oh, I just heard the John McEnroe's personal assistant, she did an interview and she said he was a real jerk to work for and he yelled at everyone, you'd be like, that tracks. That's not a scandal. No one's shocked by that. Yeah. But then think back, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, people were saying that about Ellen, remember? Yeah. They're like, oh, Ellen DeGeneres, she seems so nice and she acts this way and acts that way. But the truth is her set was hell to work on, blah, blah. I don't know if any of it's true, but I know it became a huge headache and a scandal, and it was around the end of her show. And so there is something to that. So whatever you are, own it. It's really important. But to know that, you have to know yourself. So you work on yourself first.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, self-care and be unapologetic of self-caring for yourself, which I think in the corporate world, we don't do. Look at the first maybe 20 years of our career. We are just focused on the corporation we are working for. And we have the long hours, and we have the beliefs, and we have the congruence with the corporate brand, and less so with our self brand. So really being keen on self-caring and being unapologetic to be who we want to be is going to be critical. Then you have personal strategy as well. You mentioned it's a framework, it's leveraging tools, but it's not something which lasts for 5 minutes. We've been building and shaping this program now nearly for a year, right? It's not as if we started yesterday. We've been talking to a lot of people. We have talked to executives. We are working with executives. We have been working with young tech founders and entrepreneurs as well to actually create that congruence. And so this is not something which lasts for 5 minutes. It's something which become permanent, if I can say that, but not with the aim of scaring people, but just it's linked to the self-care. And by the way, you need to evolve it on a regular basis. So like building a product, it's iterative. You test and learn, and you tweak, and the brand evolve over time. So whatever color I was using last year, which was a lot of pink, is going to evolve into maybe more black and pink, but still the pink, because pink is about having fun for me. Blue is financial services. Black, as we know, is probably more around experience, authority. But so it's about really understanding where we are going, and all this comes together. And the last point you made, actually, Jess, is about congruence. It's painful and it's tiring to lie. And so just be yourself, because that will enable you to actually feel it's a pleasure and it's easy to do it every day. I was saying to you, both of you, as we were starting, that last night I was myself, I'm learning from others. So I was on a coaching session, and one of the coach was saying that building a business, an enterprise, a corporation, is about understanding you, your strengths and your weaknesses. So I would like to leave it on my side with those points. What would be your wrap up, Jess and Lisa?
Lisa, you take it.
Yeah, I mean, so much on congruence. And I guess what I'm sitting here thinking is my wrap up or call to action would be like, listen, we all have to acknowledge that we've been conditioned to be in corporate norms, startup norms, female leader norms, male leader norms. We have been normalized so much so that even if you feel like you know yourself, you've been conditioned to probably be and adopt things that are not intrinsically congruent. So part of my journey over the last 3 years has been unpacking the normalization and really finding those things that were intrinsic, which was easy for me to find. So my call to action for everyone in wrapping up is the reason why all of these amazing examples exist and persist is because they saw through the normalization and knew deeply, as Jess highlighted, who they were. And as Sabine highlighted, they established congruence over time with that. So my call to action would be find your congruence. That's the patterns that we talked about last time in our inquiry, which is understanding your purpose. Find those patterns, find the congruence, and of course, connect into this as a strategy, and then you focus on strategic execution. So that's my wrap.
Yeah. And I would say if you're looking for the how, you're like, great, I want to find my congruence. I would love to do that. How do I do that? What's the step? There's a lot of material out there, or that's why we're here. We're actually going to be in person really soon in London and in Hartford. We're going to be in London March 19th. We're going to be in Hartford April 16th doing live authentic identity mastermind workshops. So you can come in person and actually go through a process that we've been, as Sabine mentioned, refining and codifying and tweaking to perfection for the last year. And soon, not right away, but within a few months, you'll actually be able to do that online. We're developing something for you guys to do that there. So that's my recommendation. I like to hire people to help me.
We all do. Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jess. We talked about today building unique strategy, and also understanding how to build this as a way to build a personal strategy within the scale of, being out there with our personal brand and our corporate brands. So thank you, ladies. Until next time.